Yeah! Yoo-hoo!
Welcome back. Anyone that had eyeballs and a social media account this week got a real good look at some seriously Razzie-worthy acting, playing live and on tape at the Kenosha County Courthouse in Kenosha, Wisconsin. I mean, I've heard of crocodile tears, but damn, son. Let's set aside the highly questionable actions of presiding judge Bruce E. Schroeder, ranging from banning the use of the word victims when referring to the people murdered, to making some pretty off-color jokes about Asian food, to clearing the court to dress down prosecutors for 2 lines of questioning the judge didn't like. Let's also table any discussions of the Rittenhouse legal team, headed by former prosecutors turned defense attorneys, Mark D. Richards and Corey Chirafisi, for calling a mistrial. The men argued that there had been prosecutorial overreaching, and called for a mistrial with prejudice, which would mean Kyle Rittenhouse could not be retried for murder.
What?
And if I may be so bold, I really hope that the city of Kenosha is bracing for the inevitable backlash and potential for riots that are all but certain to occur, regardless of the verdict. Your feelings on whether justice will be served depends a great deal on whether you sleep with a Glock under your pillow or not. It is not remotely outside the realm of possibility that Rittenhouse will be acquitted of all charges by a jury with only 1 black juror. The question of a fair and impartial trial wouldn't be up for debate if our justice system was also fair and impartial. But, you know, only a great fool, or I'd say a Fox News zombie.
Is there a difference?
Best I can tell, no, but that's not what's important right now. So, here's the thing. Justice in the United States is only available to the whitest... highest bidder.
Better.
Only available to the highest bidder. The American justice system is, much like many of our other institutions, irrevocably broken. Let's start by taking a look at the incarceration disparity in Louisiana alone. 32% of Louisiana's population is black, and yet 67.8% of prisoners and 73.9% of people sentenced to life in prison are black. That means that in Louisiana, black people are incarcerated at 4 times the rate of white people. Not enough? Okay. Based on population, a black person was 2.9 times as likely, and a Latinx person was 1.4 times as likely to be killed by police as a white person in America from 2013 to 2020. Although African Americans and Latinos constitute only 29% of the U.S. population, they make up 57% of the U.S. prison population. Of the 277,000 people imprisoned nationwide for a drug offense, 56% are African American or Latinx. A black person is 5 times more likely to be stopped without just cause than a white person, and about 1 in every 1,000 black men can expect to be killed by cops. Just 1 out of 1,000. Let that sink in. That means that at least 5 people from my high school can expect to be killed by cops. And I went to school in the suburbs. If African Americans and Hispanic Americans were incarcerated at the same rates as whites, the number of people in prison or jail would decline by almost 40%. Clearly, there is an extreme disparity in the application of justice in America. This is not new. I'm sure this is going to kick up some dust for the butthurt, just say no to critical race theory types. You know, like Texas Governor Greg, why yes, you can punch down from a sitting position. Abbott. But the unequal treatment and use of law enforcement to quash the rights of people of color, specifically black people, in the United States, is as much of a foundational pillar for the creation of our nation as lying to Native Americans, institutional misogyny, and rounding up Japanese Americans to be put in concentration camps during World War II. Just a quick history lesson for those of you currently attending public school and parochial schools in Texas, and the other red states clamoring to follow its lead. Our modern-day policing struggles have historical precedents in the slave patrols of colonial America. The first slave patrols were established in the Carolinas in the early 1700s. Their mission was simple: establish a system of terror in response to slave uprisings. They were charged with pursuing, apprehending, and returning runaway slaves to their owners. They had leeway to use excessive force to control and produce desired slave behavior. Slave patrols could forcibly enter any home based on the mere possibility of retrieving runaway slaves. Officially, slave patrols only continued until the end of the Civil War and the passage of the 13th Amendment. Unofficially, well, we've all seen what happens to unarmed black people when the cops show up. You could ask George Floyd, Tamir Rice, Breonna Taylor, Eric Garner, Philando Castile, or Jacob Blake, but some trigger-happy peace officers made sure they could never tell anyone anything ever again. And don't get me started on how the Second Amendment was a gimme to the southern states during debate over the Bill of Rights. It seems they wouldn't sign off on the other 9 amendments if they had to give up roving militias of white men looking to enforce slavery and the creation of the Three-Fifths Compromise. Let's contrast that for a moment with how police deal with white male lawbreakers. Dylan Roof, American white supremacist and neo-Nazi, walked into a Charleston church and murdered 9 black people attending services one evening. He was captured, taken to jail, awaited trial, and was convicted. Or how about Nicholas Cruz, who strolled into Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School with a loaded AR-15 and a backpack full of ammo, and murdered 14 students and 3 staff members. He was captured, taken to jail, awaited trial, and was convicted. Well, let's not forget James Alex Fields Jr., who deliberately drove his car into a crowd of people that were peacefully protesting the Unite the Right neo-Nazi Burning Crosses rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, killing 1 and injuring 35. He was captured, taken to jail, awaited trial, and was convicted. And then there's Robert Bowers, an anti-Semitic white supremacist, but I repeat myself, that walked into the Pittsburgh Or the Simcha congregation during Saturday morning Shabbat services and committed the deadliest attack ever on the Jewish community in the United States. Bowers murdered 11 people and wounded 6, including several Holocaust survivors. He was captured, taken to jail, awaited trial, and was convicted. At least we know those murderers were convicted. Let's not forget that just a little over 10 months ago, an armed horde of deeply delusional and dangerous Trump cult devotees stormed the U.S. Capitol building with the intent to kill, going as far as building a gallows for their own vice president. Many civilians and 138 police officers were injured. There was extensive damage to the building. Offices and chambers were vandalized and ransacked. Property was stolen, and more than $30 million of taxpayer money was needed for repairs and new security measures. 5 people died, and 4 Capitol Police officers committed suicide. While more than 615 people have been charged with federal crimes, the ringleaders are still on the loose. They all seem to have something in common. I just can't really figure out what it is. It's been nearly a year, and not one of them has been charged, tried, or convicted of sedition and/or insurrection. You thought I was gonna say because they're a bunch of shitty old white men, didn't you, Bridget?
Yeah, a little bit.
Hey, you have a little faith. It's like you don't even know me anymore. And that brings us back to on-cue Blubber Boy Kyle Rittenhouse. Pumpkin here is a special case. Kyle's mommy drove him across state lines, armed with an illegally acquired assault rifle, after attending a MAGA rally, picked a fight, and shot 3 people, murdering 2. Not only was he not shot on sight by the many officers on the scene, but video showed police thank him and offer him water prior to the killings. He was even allowed to leave the scene, even though, as caught on video, he walked towards police with his hands up as protesters yelled that he had shot people. Just for a moment, imagine that cherub-cheeked minor militia man-boy was instead a young black man. How long do you really think he would have lasted wading into a sea of cops with a loaded assault rifle in his hands? I feel pretty confident saying they wouldn't have high-fived him and offered him a cold, tasty beverage. Given the progression of the trial thus far, it's not too hard to imagine Kyle getting away with murder. American social reformer, abolitionist, orator, writer, and statesman Frederick Douglass once wrote, "Where justice is denied, where poverty is enforced, where ignorance prevails, and where any one class is made to feel that society is an organized conspiracy to oppress, rob, and degrade them, neither persons nor property will be safe." We'll be right back with Allison Hayslip. Stick around.
Yeah. Woohoo!